This is the Kestrel Country Podcast, where we discuss the people, places, and events all around Kestrel Country. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Kestrel Country Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Church, joined here once again by my lovely wife and co-host, Catherine.
Hello, hello.
We are coming at you mid-May. Hard to believe it's already mid-May. Doesn't really feel like mid-May.
It's been a cold spring.
I know. Cold and wet.
Yes, which
Feels
hopefully
good.
is good.
We need the water.
Yep.
Farmers need the water. May showers. Nope, April showers.
Nope.
Bring May flowers.
Yep.
And they're coming. It's true. Well, we had a fun discussion this week.
We did.
Excited to bring it to you.
Yep.
Talking with Brad and Nicole Covington.
About Forged Construction. So they launched that a year ago. They've been in Moscow for quite a while. We were in college with them. And Brad's been a firefighter for years. So he talks about that. But then this last year, they launched into their own construction company.
Yeah. Yeah, fun to talk to them about what they're doing, about their history, how it started, and yeah, excited. So let's get right into our discussion with Brad and Nicole Covington. Brad and Nicole Covington, thanks for coming in today.
We're good to be here. Yeah. It's fun.
It was fun.
Yeah. So we usually start by kind of getting some background about people. So it's our podcast is about people, places, and events around the area, right? So what brought you guys, how long have you been here? And what brought you to the Moscow area, the Palouse?
So I came from a Navy family. So born in Virginia, was a East Coastie for a long time. I ended up in the Bahamas and back to Virginia. He was a submariner, so you move around, but you're pretty tied to some places as a submarine officer. And ultimately, we ended up in Oklahoma. My sister came out here for college. My plan was always to be a pilot. I really wanted to be a pilot. Really? An optometrist once told me that, you're colorblind.
You are?
It's not total, but
okay.
It's significant.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, you'll never be a pilot and you'll never be a fireman. And I never really thought anything of that. I just was crushed by not being a pilot. But ultimately, I came out here to go to the University of Idaho, get a ROTC scholarship and be a Marine officer. And because that's like the next best thing to being a pilot.
Yeah. Wait, so back up a second. Why not a firefighter?
So I wasn't interested in firefighting at all.
What is color blindness?
It probably has to do with reading a thermal imager.
Oh,
so thermal imaging equipment use shades of the old technologies use shades of green. Nowadays they're full spectrum color and so that's not an issue.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. That was just I was trying to put that together.
Yeah. It's also the factor of you're looking for various hues in a smoky building. You need to see differentiations of color. I'm not sure why that would factor in because they're all shades of brown and gray. So anyway, we came out here. I ultimately got involved with the Moscow Volunteer Fire Department, and I discovered that this is exactly what I wanted to do, and pursued that path. Unfortunately, that was also post 9/11, around 2005. Everybody wanted to be a fireman then, so tested around, and ultimately got on with the Lewiston Fire Department. So I've been there since 2009.
Wow.
October of 2009. And so my wife and I met through various school activities.
Volleyball.
Yep.
Yeah.
Co-ed volleyball.
Oh, yeah.
At the Hamilton Indoor Rec
I
Center.
remember that well.
That was
Set us up for success.
I think it should work. And then, but you left out your construction stuff, which is like working with Errol Paul.
Yeah. So,
kind of that
throughout college, I was working odd jobs. I got involved in construction actually as a child at home. Mm-hmm. And so my parents built a house. I was homeschooled. So I was directly involved in all facets of that endeavor. And I just always enjoyed that. I've always enjoyed blue collar work. I mean, just, growing up as a kid around military people, it's just a very similar quality of there's no room for drama. They're the kind of people that just get stuff done. And those sorts of people that work with dirt under their fingernails are my kind of people. And so the involvement in construction has always been just a kind of a quiet thing for me. It's always been a thing that I've done on the side to kind of provide a little bit of extra for our family. And it's also something that's very closely connected to firefighting. Building construction and fire behavior are two of the most important things to understand to be a good craftsman in the job of firefighting. And so most firefighters are in some way involved with construction on the side.
It seems like that's funny. I never really put that together, but thinking through it, it's like, so much of code and building code is fire related, right? It's how does fire travel through walls? How do we have the right kind of brakes and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. The moment I show up on the front curb, I'm looking at how a building is put together, trying to figure out where the fire is. And based upon the window sizes, the plumbing vents, the meters, how many are on the side of the house, those sorts of things tell me a lot of information about what the fire might do. Is it an old balloon frame house? Well, next thing I'm going to check is the attic, right? If I know this house is a multi-residential occupancy, but there's 1 meter on the side of the house, well, all of the improvements were not done to code. And so there's probably no fire stops. Those pieces of information, along with, what does a bedroom window look like versus a kitchen or a living area? Those sorts of things are very, very connected to building construction.
Yeah. Interesting. And then you guys built it was your first house?
Yep.
Yourselves?
Yeah. So go ahead and talk about your family, your dad.
So
that was kind of what kicked this whole thing off.
Yeah. So I grew up in Wenatchee, Washington, Gene Housel's church, which is King's Cross, and the apples were a big part of our family. We all were in the country, and I grew up with them. And so the Apple Boys came out here to look at New St. Andrews College, and we came out with them and went to a Wendy, and I thought, this is a great little town. I want to come out here someday. So it's falling off. So I kind of told my parents when I finished, I was homeschooled all the way till my senior year, went to the River Academy my senior year, and then told them I wanted to come out to Moscow. And being the baby, my dad said, well, I've always thought about going out there and building homes. And so they went ahead of me, actually, and I finished school living in my grandmother's house and taking care of her. And then she came out and followed us out here as well. So when I came out, he had already started building their place. And then he started building some homes in the Greenside subdivision, which is where we decided to build our first home. So he kind of helped mentor us through that process, but we did a lot of the work to build equity and, young, newly married couple. And so that was a process and kind of how we first got our initial, interest in building.
It's also a wonderful marriage tip. If you really want to set yourself up through the gridiron in the first year of marriage, just go for it.
Build a house.
Build a house.
Oh man, it was such a cute house.
Oh,
too.
it was.
did
You
such
guys,
an awesome
you really
job.
did, and maximized that space
We
so
did.
well.
And I feel like that was really early too, in when that kind of thing was very, and it still is a little more unique around Moscow. Like quality of architecture and
homes.
construction seems to be lacking a bit. Obviously, you mentioned we just had Winces on and
Woodbury
and
stuff
what
is
they're
exciting.
doing, but that was pretty early on when people were you know, that kind of the craftsman details that you did, the things that really stand out were pretty unique. So it always stood out to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was we actually did, a lot of people don't know, some green building initiative stuff as well, which in the end was amazing because our Avista bill was, you know, you talk to people about what they spend, and we were $60 to $90 the highest.
Wow.
Always.
So what made that difference?
So you'll know more about that.
So it was number one, when being airtight is critical. So we had spray foam combined with blow-in insulation. So that was a huge thing. The spray foam, you can go full cavity. It's pretty expensive, but spray foam definitely gives you an enormous amount of R value. There's also some drama in the industry as far as R values and the way it's calculated.
Okay, what's the R value?
So R value is the insulation factor of your cavity. So a higher R value is more insulation.
Okay.
Spray foam is a very, very it's as far as the way it's measured, spray foam doesn't get the credit it deserves. So ultimately, that was a big factor. Also, when you seal up your Tyvek, you know, nowadays they got the zip system, which is fantastic. It's just your sheeting is taped up, and being airtight is a big factor. So that
our 1920 farmhouse is definitely not.
Yeah.
Super not.
Yeah.
And nowadays, I'm really excited
really cute.
about ICF blocks because, you know, if people really want to go hard early on and spend all that money of pouring an ICF house, I think they're going to see a really good long-term payoff because you have an enormous amount of thermal mass. That's a big part of the ICF is you have all this concrete in your wall. And so that takes the ups and downs of temperature and holds on to that heat. Back to firefighting. You know, it just that's a huge benefit of an ICF house. So the thermal, the efficiency contributions of what you're building, as well as building for long term, that's where we're really going to see people see value going forward. And I'm sympathetic to people who want to build economically. I mean, it's hard to build with a craftsman style and be affordable.
Yeah.
But if you can put the investment in things that will be forever, your frame, then you can always try to dress up other things like your kitchen, countertops, those sorts of things later.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So you did that house, and then you had fairly recently finished another house out in the country.
We needed to get out. Yeah. So the last thing my dad ever did after he retired from the Navy this was when I was a teenager. We sold his house in the city. We bought 20 acres in the middle of Oklahoma countryside and raised cattle. And so he has passed away now from Alzheimer's at a young age. But I'll never forget what a wonderful blessing that was growing up in that setting. You know, back to my love of blue collar people. I mean, those are just the salt of the earth kind of people. We were there during the 1999 tornado run. There was just an enormous amount of Class 5 tornadoes. And so huge swaths of Oklahoma were just wrecked. And I got to see those kind of people just not care about anything personally and just help out their neighbor. You know, it's amazing to see how God rattles things and you find out what sticks and stays together. That those kind of people are amazing people to grow up around. And I just wanted to kind of replicate that for my family.
Yeah. And create some, I think, you know, I grew up in the country for like 12 years before we moved into city life. And I told my parents, I said, someday I will get back to the country. And they said, of all of our kids, we believe you are the one who probably will, because I loved it. And so when I'm glad Brad wanted to do that as well, a big part of it too was, how do we create some like hardship for our children? You know,
How to
I think that's
learn the hard
healthy,
things.
how to learn that's hard work. You know, just even building a fence, it's exhausting, building our barn and stuff like that. So I think that was a big part for us as well.
Yeah. So did that process kind of help push you towards starting Forged and getting back into construction more?
Yeah. It was the seed in the ground. You know, really, we were just pushing ourselves to do something that was going to be a good long-term investment. We sold our house, we moved into a camp trailer, and we lived on site for once the septic and power were in, we moved on site and we're there living in our 28-foot camper and building.
Yeah.
And so obviously that just does things. I mean, we didn't know what it was going to do, but it just does things to a family, and it's all wonderful. And so doing that was great. Set our kids and us up as a wonderful team, and ultimately the events of this last year, I just realized I'm a firefighter. I love my job. It's one of the most honorable blue collar professions a guy could have the blessing of being a part of.
Yeah.
I love the people I work with. It's just, I was also concerned that as time goes on, as the vaccine mandates and those sorts of things perhaps continue, that I needed to also be able to sit in a chief's office and say, I understand this is what you're asking me to do, and just cheerfully say, I'm not going to do that, and also know that my family will be okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we started Forged Construction. I employ Nicole's dad now. He's my project manager. He's built hundreds of homes, high-end homes around Seattle, and it brings a great eye to the market and materials and managing the projects. And so he takes care of all the big new construction projects and some of our remodels. We also have 4 other employees. I have 2 foremen and two worker bees that just are great people. And I think that if there's one thing that I think is my best quality, it's recognizing that my people are my greatest commodity. I don't know if a lot of businesses get that yet.
Yeah.
And so I really, my priority to my people actually outweighs my prioritization of the client. If I got a client that's going to mistreat my people, then I'll go find some other work, because I really need my guys to joyfully build things for the glory of God and feed their family. And, you know, we're a team.
Yeah.
And so that's critical.
Well, when you said yet, like, people don't realize that yet. It's like, yeah, that's rapidly becoming obvious, right? It's the job market is so tight. There's so much competition, and people are realizing, like, man, I've got a lot of options out there. My skills are in demand, right? It's actually pretty impressive that you've been able to find all those employees. Are those people that you already knew were there? How have you been able to get those people?
Well, it's really simple. You have to pay them a price that they find valuable. I mean, it's just that simple.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's another thing that surprises me when people discuss, oh, it's just so oppressively expensive. You know, if
construction, you mean? Like when people say
let's just apply it to anything, you know, the cost of a burger, you know, it's like the quintessential example of just, for me to get a person to show up every day and feed his family, put gas in his tank, and you know, take his family on vacation, I got to get him to leave another job and come work for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm going to offer him some value to do that. And that's just the brutal fact. And so, I recognize that. So I got 4 guys to come work with me. And then my project manager came over. He's not paid what he's worth, but we'll get him there someday. We're building something long term. Yeah. But these other 4 employees, one of my guys, he works a night job, and he told them he didn't want to work Sundays. And they're like, well, okay. And they just kept scheduling him on Sunday. He's like, if you're going to keep doing this, I'm not going to show up. And they're like, well, go find another job then. And so he did.
There's jobs out there.
He totally has the leverage here. The worker has the leverage. And so that's a wonderful thing.
And you also have to think when you're paying them about the work they're doing, because another thing is construction is not easy. It's hard work. And especially, foundation work, digging with a shovel, that kind of stuff. So I think that needs to be recognized too, because some of these guys could go work office jobs for probably less, but they like the activeness and they like being out. But you also have to think, hey, you're worth this. This is hard work. This is backbreaking work.
Well, especially in Moscow with the Palouse. You add in our weather and our seasonality of when you can be outdoors, and then you see them outdoors.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. What have been some of the challenges? So when did you start Forged?
May of last year.
It's about a year.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right around it. Yeah.
All right.
Happy anniversary. What have been some of the challenges? Anything unexpected that have been surprising? Obviously we've had insane ups and downs with materials and sourcing and that kind of stuff. But were you already anticipating some of that starting in last year, or what have been some of the surprising things?
Materials is obviously a known one. Builders don't really get to use that as a excuse anymore, because we just know materials are going to be a problem.
Yeah.
So the difficulty then is creating a schedule for your men to show up places around that. So that's definitely been a challenge. Having enough jobs in the hopper that you can shift people from one place to another and still have them consistently and efficiently employed. That's been a challenge. The other thing too is a self-imposed challenge of our business model is we're trying to own as much of the trades as we can efficiently do. So we'll do excavation. We'll do foundations of smaller size. We'll do eventually, if I can find myself a great framer to teach us how to frame well. We can do small remodels and stuff like that, but to do a real whole house efficiently, we're not there yet. But we'll do the siding, we'll do painting, we'll in the remodel stuff, I got a guy that can do good drywall, and so owning all of those in-house is fantastic. Our trim work and our cabinetry is probably our best thing that we offer.
What do you think about how does that maybe reconcile, or what's your take on that versus specialization? Because wouldn't the argument be like, well, how can you do everything really well versus isn't it better to have specialized guys that you can bring in? And
it absolutely is going to create a higher end product for things like the finished trim and the finished cabinetry. That's why I hire guys who are those, right? So that's really important. The finished product, the point at which you create the illusion of perfection, that's really important to have quality individuals there. I'm not going to be as fast building a foundation as a foundation guy. But back to the people problem, can I get a foundation? Can I call up a concrete guy and say, hey, I need you in the next month or 2 or 6? I can't do that, right? So So for people to say, hey, this market's getting crazy, we would like to put an addition on our house, I'm their guy because
So specialization, it's not that you're saying, well, our system's better than specialization. It's that in this market,
This is what we're doing.
it's just not realistic.
Right.
And in the size of Moscow.
Yeah. Whereas I just always think about, my experience in Michigan and my dad's and that kind of thing. And it was like when I worked on a framing crew, it was like, that's all we did. Like only framing, know? And there were 8 of us. And it was like, you could frame a house in a week. But we just don't have that out here.
No,
there's
we don't have that demand.
There's not a bunch of guys who all have 8-man framing crews that are competing for work.
Yeah. So as subcontractors are just more and more fought over, my timeline is looking better with other generals because I hold those things in house. The same guys are doing the same work. It's still done to a good standard, but it's not going to get done as fast. So,
gotcha.
In a way, it is because part of when you mentioned challenges that we were running into was we had to have multiple jobs in the hopper because we'd be held up on a job waiting on a sub. And so then it started this conversation of, well, how many things are we willing to start training or even hiring people to teach us the skills to our guys? Like it is a goal of ours to have a framer come in and teach our guys so we could do that aspect. But plumbing, electrical, those are specialties we never really want to get into. We don't love doing roofing. We can do roofing. That's something we'll probably sub out. But the rest, the reason we're bringing in house is because we run into that where, we're stuck on this job because so-and-so is behind or they lost an employee. And so we're trying to hopefully work around that as best we can.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
and people should understand too, like the part of what's fast about a specialist is just their system. And that's a huge benefit that I bring out of the fire service is your system, your algorithm for how you do things is constantly being assessed and readdressed. And so I tell my guys all the time, evaluate your system, be looking for the ways in which we can improve. For example, when we do our finish work, one of my guys goes around with a tape measure and measures all the windows, and he inputs that information into an app, and that guy at the saw is reading that information and he's checking those things off. That system is what creates the efficiency.
Yeah.
And so taking that over to framing is the same sort of benefit. Just learning that system is where all of our guys are continually growing. And that's where, I don't want to do this just through this boom. I want to hire guys for a career. And they know that. And so it behooves us to learn those systems early so that we can start making our own improvements.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. It does really remind me quite a bit. Again, we were only framing, but like the guy I worked for in high school and back in Michigan was, that was the same thing. Like it was pretty rare, but his guys, most of the guys I worked with had been with him for 10 plus years. And as far as I know, are still working there. Like it's, it's like the long-term career people. And he did, even us high schooler laborers who were just carrying stuff from one point A to point B is like he took us and our families to a theme park in the summer and like stuff that nobody does in like a framing crew. But it was like he took good care of his guys and it's that's funny. I never really thought that much about it, but it's really similar.
No, I mean as time goes on, that's going to become everything, and I want to keep my guys forever. And it's interesting too, as a firefighter, that's a paramilitary organization. There's rank and file. And it's been a wonderful thing to learn how to lead men who have their own truck and tools and don't owe me or need me in any way. Like any one of my guys could go off and do his own thing. So I need to treat them with value and respect, and learning how to do that and then taking that to the fire department where you could easily cheat and say, well, I'm such and such of rank and you're below me, so do as you're told, right? We all know that's not actual real leadership. But learning it in person outside of that kind of organization just really benefits me as a fireman as well.
Yeah. So you're still firefighting?
Yes, I am.
Still doing it?
Yeah. So we work, I work a third of the days of the year, and guys don't need me when I'm not there. So I got good guys. And again, that just comes back to a people thing. You know, they don't need me to babysit them, and I can't babysit them. They're working multiple jobs, sometimes 2 or 3 jobs in a day. So,
how far out, like you mentioned, you know, that's a big problem right now, right? You can't just say, hey, I want somebody to come in the next month. How far out are you guys? How far out are you booking stuff? Is that part of what your plan is, to be able to be available? Or are you just like, man, we're booked for the next 2 years?
Yeah, I don't like saying I'm booked for the next 2 years. I hear a lot of contractors are saying that, and that's just not true. I had a gal yesterday say to me, I need a door and a wall installed in this little room so we could turn it into a bedroom. Would you be able to do that? Well, of course I can. I mean, that's a half day. A guy shows up with some lumber, sheetrock, and a door, and any that's a great little filler job. You know, I could probably get that in next week, because there's always those inefficiencies. Again, back to managing multiple projects. That's where being diverse in what you do helps your company grow organically. You know, we got new constructions that we're trying to put in the ground this year. We got remodel stuff that is major. We've got filler jobs in between, as well as all the subcontract cabinet and trim work that we do. So there's always little holes here and there, and I never turn anyone away, and I always call them back. I guess that's if there's one thing I'll try to always do, is just call them back. I mean, it doesn't take but 20 seconds to tell them what they already know, which is that you're busy.
Yeah.
But it makes a big difference, because when we've had a lot of experience with calling people or managing buildings, and you know, you need work, you need painters, you need whatever it might be. And it is, if people actually get back to you, that's huge. You're like, well, they responded, they got me a quote, you know, or whatever it might be.
Well, and things won't always be this busy.
No,
Right.
No, they
It's
won't.
like, you can't act as though, I'm never going to need that work, right? It's like the people who, who just act that way in the boom times, they might not be faring so well when things get a little lean, right?
Yeah.
And part of the reason I can do that is I've got an amazing team in the office. So Nicole and her dad work really well together, obviously. And I mean, just to kind of talk about what you do, because I mean, a lot of men want to get into construction, but they don't want to manage the stuff behind the scenes. And that's where I've got Nicole.
Yeah. So part of launching this construction business not only was to be, anti-fragile with his fire job and not knowing what would happen, but I was working at an accounting firm, and I learned a lot, and I'm grateful for my time there, but it was not family friendly. You know, it became very evident to me that things were lacking in the home, and that what I consider my first and most important job, being a mom and a wife, we chatted, and he said, hey, we should do this on the side, and you have these skills and you can manage this. And so I do some other bookkeeping as well on the side for people, but Forge is the primary. And then I do some on the side, and I consult a lot and train people, because we have a lot of people in this community who are running their own businesses and need to learn those skills. So where it works for me is if it's like a time and materials job, I don't need a lot of his involvement or a bid. Brad will bid, do that, give it to me. I do the invoicing, working with the client, doing that. So basically all the paperwork, all the boring computer stuff that he's walked into my office before and been like, thanks for doing what you do. I would not want to do this. I'm like, I
Or
know.
couldn't.
Yeah.
Honestly, my brain does not operate efficiently in those areas at all.
Give you a shovel.
Yeah, there's some parallels on the sides of this table. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Where would we be?
Oh man, don't even want to think about that. Yeah. So where did the name come from? Forged.
It's just kind of a take on what caused us to want to do a construction company was just a joy and hardship. Forging a thing is a very violent process. It involves fire. And I obviously appreciate the qualities of fire. And I mean, it was a very natural fit when we went. I don't even remember how we came up with the name.
Levi Law, and he did a great job because we knew we wanted Forged. We felt like it was a strong name and kind of gave some of that fire background feeling. But then he chose colors with us and stuff to kind of really push that forward. So we feel like it kind of makes it an obvious, this is a construction company run by a firefighter.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And just the joy of adversity. I mean, I just whenever when things get really challenging, if I'm really on my game as far as being Christ-like, I just smile. I'm a huge fan of Jocko Willink and just, things are hard. Good. Like as Christians, I think that's probably where we need to grow the most of just looking at the world around us with a smile, saying, there's dragons to slay. And look at that. I'm raising little dragon slayers. This is a wonderful time to be alive. And the world is dying for examples of people who can look at the world around them and just laugh and shrug it off and show up to work the next day with a good attitude.
Yeah.
So I'm fortunate to have myself and 6 other people that want to do that.
Yeah. And that is something we check in with our guys regularly. That's actually kind of one of our little, pulses on how our guys are doing is we always ask them, do you still have joy? Are you joyful? Are you happy to come to work and show up to work? And if not, let's talk about that. What can we do better? So that's kind of been a big thing for us.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yep.
Cool, guys. Well, how do people find you? Where do they get in touch with you if they want
a call back?
Need a project. Yes. If they want you to call them back.
Yeah. So my number is 208-669-1040.
Yeah.
I can be reached at Brad at forgedconstruction.work. And that's also our .work.
Yeah, we've heard about that before.
Oh, yeah.
With Andrew.
I know. I
was talking
love
about
it.
that.
It's such a great man. We were going to run out of .coms.
Yeah.
So yeah, forgedconstruction.work is our website, and basically that's just a quick venue of getting in contact with us. And there's not much of a website, but
if you fill out the contact on the website, it comes to my dad and me. So we try to respond to our emails quickly as well. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much for
taking
coming.
the time.
thanks for having us on.
That's great.
We like to hang out with you guys.
Yeah.
And there's donuts too.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next week.